Good evening. I want to welcome you all to the November 12th Town Council meeting in the Town of Washington. Before we get into the program, as it were, well, you all were voting for each other this past week. I want you to know Beverly and I were in New Orleans having a grand time. And I want to congratulate everybody. I want to congratulate Fred for being mayor-elect, and Gail, the next treasurer, and the various council members, Mary Ann and Patrick and Brad and Catherine, and new member Joe Wyatt, who is going to be joining the team. I want to thank Jerry Goebel for the amount of time, effort, and energy that he put into serving this town for 18 years, long time, and I really appreciate it. Henry Gorfine, I see you back there, you ran and didn't win, but 4 years, so now you can be even an older man open to new ideas. Thank you for running, thank everybody. Somewhat related to all this, we are going to have a swearing in of the new mayor at the next meeting, December 10th. The reason being, which I'm the mayor, but the reason being that my term is up December 31st. The next council meeting of next year is January, whatever, 10th. And so Fred will be sworn in at our next monthly council meeting. I'm sworn in to be mayor effective January 1st. I'm going to get every last day out of this gig. And also a side note, for just people start thinking, come next year, once the new council is in place, there'll be at least one, I think, slot on the planning commission that has to be filled. And it's several months off, but the people thinking about that. That being said, oh yes, and it's Fred's birthday. So happy birthday. And what number is it?
Many.
You don't know what many means.
62.
62, I remember that, that's pretty good. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right, let's get rocking here. First order item is for the June 11th minutes. Any questions, observations, changes?
I have a correction. Under the ARB, it should say ARB would not be meeting in June instead of March.
Okay. Anything else? Mary Ann, you're reading that?
I recommend a lot, and also there's just like a couple of typos.
Okay.
I'll just give.
Do I have a motion to approve? All in favor? All right, the July 9th minutes.
I have corrections page 2, where it was discussing section -6-1-2-1, the first line of that paragraph. It should be changed from any applicable to the Department of Health shall be referred to all, and then to any applicable. I have a new verse. So it's, first. But down below it's correct, but the first line, for some reason, lots of time. So it should be all applicable to any applicable. And then there's a couple.
Motion to approve?
I make a motion.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Treasurer's report, Mr. Goble.
All right, the total consolidated assets of the town of Washington as of 10/31/2018 were $406,548.01. During that same period, the Washington Water Works consolidated assets was $20,097.92, and the wastewater works was $2,391.29. In October, we pumped 840,200 gallons, backwashed 24,400. We billed 800, leaving us 815,800 billable gallons. We billed 643,441 gallons. That leaves us treated but not yet billed 172,359. Town of Washington's income, October 2018, $31,542.71. The income for the Washington Water Works was $6,992.48. And the wastewater income was $11,295.65. You'll also find attached the bills to be paid and the additional bills. It's a little messy there. We had one issue for stamps. We thought we were spending $7,500, but the printer was only $75. So it is correct, $10,437 for the general account, $7,096.08 for the water works account, and $15,120.11 for the wastewater account. Nothing unusual. And then the additional bills there, promo things, some flowers, and new light bulbs, I think that we purchased. And other than that, nothing.
Questions? If not, a motion to approve? Second. All in favor?
How did you say?
Sure, she did. Ladies first. Planning Commission,
No report.
ARB is not meeting this month. Let me give an update on a subject that was discussed at the last meeting and an action we took. And that was, as you all recall, we expressed interest to the county, expressed our interest to leasing the county administrator's office building. To remind, that building has been sitting empty for 6 months or so. The county is going through a lengthy process to figure out what their space needs are. We thought it would be an ideal space for the town to use. We offered to rent it with 6-month renewable lease at $500 a month, and to spend several $1,000s to fix up some issues that the building has. That was first given to the building committee, consisting of Mr. Lizinski and Gary Curry and Ron Fraser, and then it was brought up at the supervisors meeting on Monday. And Mr. Fraser essentially did not like the idea, and kept pointing out that they didn't know what all their needs were, and they wanted flexibility, and they didn't want to lock themselves in anything. And we had pointed out on several occasions that a lease was renewable every 6 months. We could be thrown out 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So they had flexibility, but that argument did not seem to persuade. So that option is no longer on the table. And I didn't, that option's no longer on the table.
So he didn't give
Pardon?
he didn't give a time when they thought they would know their needs.
Well, they don't have a specific time, but here's what's happening. I'm telling you more than you might want to know, but you asked the question. The supervisors, the county has a lot of space in various places that they rent, and they have a lot of different people. And there's sort of a mismatch between where people are and space. Their space needs need to be reviewed. The supervisors looked at it, thought about it over a period of several months. and then decided that what they really should do is bring in an outside space planning expert. So the building committee is now going through a process where they get RFPs, they're getting people saying they'd be interested in doing business. So the building committee will take some amount of time to determine who they think they should hire. That outfit will then spend some amount of time looking at needs versus what's available, and will come in with a recommendation. And once they come in with a recommendation, the Board of Supervisors will, over some period of time, come to a conclusion.
So next summer.
The estimates is widely thrown around. We've been going through this process for 6 months already, but probably another year before. So we were thinking we could sort of do whatever. That's the wisdom of the Board of Supervisors. So that does never, so whatever, that's the way it goes. So we have still the issue of how do we fulfill our own space needs. And to my knowledge, we don't have what is sort of obviously a really good plan B, but there are some plan Bs.
Maybe we could get their efficiency expert to come up here and remodel.
Following up on that, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I suggest that we have, right now, we have a building that we use for the town hall. There is certainly some great desire to get the town clerk out of the attic area, and whether there might be a way without harming the historical texture of the building, to be able to put in some kind of offices back here in the corners or something like that, in a space that is not used, might be an option that the town might want to consider. I don't know whether we want to get an expensive sheetrock, wood frame sheetrock, and any of the particulars, but I think it is an option that we should look at.
Actually, can we look at that?
Pardon?
Didn't we look at that a year or two ago? And then we also looked at doing something here, building a bathroom.
So Brad suggested, probably a year ago, an alternative of building something behind the building. I don't think it's ever been suggested of doing it in here until now.
I think I suggested that
There-
there's a month.
Did you? I'm sorry,
I
Jerry.
said we could work something out downstairs.
No, I apologize, I did not
We're going to dump over to something else.
recall that. And then there's been some, I guess I just say thinking about, is there a space in the town that might be available at some appropriate cost that's of appropriate size. So that's where we are. And, I guess I propose that you all think about this some more.
Should we put it on the agenda for December as a discussion point?
Sure, why not? I mean, having said that, if people want to discuss your proposal right now, that's fine with me. I'm not, your proposal, excuse me. I'm sorry. Whoever whoever's proposal.
Well, my suggestion was, you can still have the office upstairs, but you can put a desk down here with a laptop that links to the desktop upstairs, and anybody can come in, anything can be done down here, and there's really nothing. But the printing can still be done up there. Even this PUD instance tonight, you need some printing, which you brought down the street, you print it and bring it back, and you still have the office upstairs with the printers. Doesn't have to be elaborate.
My suggestion would be you could put a 12 by 12 space over there. The wall, the outside of the wall could be used for council displays, or we could do something attractive. It would allow some natural light into that space. And it would allow the town clerk to be able to work on one floor, be able to meet people if they come in. But I think Jerry and I are working from a point of what is, this is something that we already have. We have not budgeted funds to go out and to rent a space. We haven't budgeted funds to do any renovation or addition to this space. But certainly I think it's very important that the town clerk be accessible. It's very difficult now with those narrow stairs for anybody to come up. And also for her sanity to get her out of the attic. It's important. I just think it's a very unhealthy place to be.
Laura's nodding in approval.
My knees are not as well.
Any other thoughts on this subject, Brad? Patrick, Mary Ann, anybody?
Well, if we do something down here, I don't think we have to go to the extent of carpentry and drywall. There's plenty of action office
Right.
petitions that you can buy, and you can actually get a really good selection of that that's been refurbished. It makes it even less expensive, and something in the corner could work out quite economically. So,
Brad, have you looked at the buildings back here?
there's only one building back
That
here, and there's,
yeah.
and the proprietor is sitting next to me, so I don't think there's nothing back here as you talk about the buildings.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen in the health department.
You talking about what?
We don't know what's going to happen in the health department.
No, no. Yeah.
In theory, that could, I know, but that will be empty sometime too.
Well, this would not have to be thought of as a
No.
permanent solution to have something downstairs here. It wouldn't preclude finding something else. Does the county have any interest in selling the,
No.
they don't?
That building?
Yeah.
That's when I first expressed interest in selling the building and buying it from them. I mean, here's just a review. The building is sitting empty. Ricky Jenkins is concerned that its lack of usage is going to have the building deteriorate even more. They have been quoted a figure of something like $60,000 to fix that building up to some standard. It sounds to me like a lot of money.
It does.
And we essentially said to them, though, we would, when I say we,
Yeah.
I mean I, we didn't, it's not such as a we either way. But would you consider town buying the building for some modest amount, appropriate amount? You don't have to spend what you estimated, $50,000, $60,000 to fix it up, and you don't have any apparent need for it.
Right.
Because so far, they haven't been able to put anybody in there, that idea was rejected, and I think understandably, where they said, well, look, we want to go through this whole process, and we have this review, and let's see what their needs are, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't want to foreclose any options. But that's when we then went back and said, well, what if we lease it? They're trying to figure out what to do with the Rat building, which they own, the Rat Theater next to them. And they have all sticks, and it is sort of
Does
there are a
the,
lot of pieces to the puzzle. I'm not making light of the challenge that they have to figure out how to best utilize, match their people to their needs, to the space available, and save money. And it's not an obvious set of answers.
does the administrator's office have a restroom in it?
It does. It has one restroom in it. Yes, it has one restroom. And there's been talk over the last year or two by various people at different times as to whether, given there's an express need for public restroom facilities, that both the county is interested in to some extent, the town is interested in to some extent, that attached to or behind that building or what have you would be a good location for restroom facilities, give them access to wastewater and centrality and location, et cetera, et cetera. So it's sort of something that's been talked about, but again, it's like, there's no, I wouldn't say there's a really strong advocate for that. Though it's something I've suggested, and others have suggested. The public facilities, the risk of digressing, I think is one of those things that some people in the county think is important and wonderful, and others would say, huh? We got to worry about toilets in the town of Washington?
The visitors do.
The visitors, but they're not people. Yeah, the visitors do. I just will express this opinion. I think it's really going to be up to you all to figure out what you want to do. That's going to be my position.
I would like to offer one thing too, which is maybe we could ask the task force that's doing the administration, studying that, to come up with some suggestions or recommendations. And look at that and put it on the agenda for next week and get on what we have on the agenda for tonight, which is a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think we should keep going. I guess I will express one opinion. I think this is an historic town, and that's part of our whole positioning and proposition. We're in a historic building, which if anybody dared touch the outside of it, everyone would go bananas. And I think it'd be a real shame if there was any, like I said, take your point, Patrick, any permanent disruption for something that would, on the surface, not really fit the character of the building. But one does have to come up with a solution. And it might be perfectly good with temper. I think Laura should opinion, maybe not now, but I think Laura's opinion on this is
Don't hurt the structure.
don't what?
Don't touch the structure. Don't. It's a jewel. It's really beautiful.
I just have the feeling every,
The temporary wall.
Yeah, I think
Stands there.
everything that I was mentioning was temporary. I don't think there's anybody who's been talking about permanent.
I know, but there has been talk of busting out a window and all that. And once you do something like that, Department of Historic Resources
yes.
has named this the first building that could become standalone historic in the town. You know, it's ready to go right now. We could have it. It could have its own designation, not just in the town.
All right, let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting. I would encourage everybody to think about potential options.
Do you want the administrative task force to go?
And that's fine with me. I wouldn't limit it to that, but yeah.
The chair will take it on.
And you could look at different kind of petitions. Fred already has.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for me, I guess. But John Bennett,
Mr. Mayor, I have two things. There's a first draft of the PUD ordinance in a form that fits into the existing town ordinances. I want to emphasize it is a first draft for everyone to review. I'll just touch on a few things. I worked off the draft from the Planning Commission, and many of the things don't have to be restated. For instance, number one, it's not typical in the ordinance itself to state goals and purposes except to define what is to be accomplished concretely by the ordinance. So I reduced most of that to providing additional structures and amenities or other opportunities. Then,
Excuse me, John, or whatever you are. I'm missing page 2 of this. I go from page 1 to page 3. And I
Stop
don't,
with that.
I have page 3 on the back.
What, everybody's on that?
And I go to page 5.
Is that what that was?
Well, that's not very helpful. Well, I put everything on 1 to 2 sided and it's split. So do you want to go take a moment and go over the next thing while I go up and make new copies for everybody?
the second thing,
I apologize.
Or do you want to just keep talking? What's
I
your-
don't really necessarily have to look at the exact language here. I'm just going to touch on a few highlights.
I would prefer to see the
Okay.
real
Let me make sure I have the original. See, I had the original, that's why I didn't understand why you were confused.
What else did you have, John?
You wanna,
Well, the second point is something that I hope won't be a consideration. I know that everybody already knows that we appear before the clerk, or have the clerk come here and take the oath of office before December 31st. Any oaths that are made or even sworn thereafter have no effect. The office comes vacant. So just a little reminder, not a little reminder, a big reminder that traditionally we've had Peggy come over and administer the oath to everywhere at the December meeting, the meeting before everybody takes
To
office.
everybody in December. Okay.
And she's happy to do that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I was just saying that, but it should be everybody. And John.
And you'll have a qualification form for the December. Peggy will have it for you. And I'll just, Mr. Mayor, you can just pass me by and move on to the other one.
All right, well, next up in old business is the consideration of a resolution to adopt a policy relating to dispositions of stub streets. And we have all been given that. This is something that was worked on by the Planning Commission. There's been several go-rounds on the subject. Well, actually, let me just stop something here. I meant to do this earlier. For those of you in the audience, and for everybody for that matter, what we're going to do tonight is proceed on a couple of these issues. We will then, if we choose to vote so, go into closed session to discuss the 3 items under new business. And before we go into closed session, I'm going to say a few words about that. We'll then come out of closed session and we may take some course of action or action. So for those of you in the audience, when you leave to go into closed session, we are likely to be taking some action when we get back. For those of you who want to, stick around for a minute. How long will be in closed session? I'll ultimately give you guidance and sort of say we're going to closed session. There's really no reason for you to come back. In this case, we might do something, but you can actually read what it is we're considering. So. Okay. Any thoughts on the Stub Street process that we came up with over several months?
I think you hit all the points that we had talked about at the last meeting. I just wanted to tweak it a little bit, John. And just, I thought perhaps we could add in George Eatman's first name and Mrs. Eagle's first name for that at the beginning. And under number 1, the subject, it is made for a public purpose or so as to confer a benefit. And then near the end where it says, and may also consider any matter, did you want to say, and council may also consider any matter? So, I just need a subject there.
Well, I don't think attorneys are constrained by the normal rules of grammar.
Well, I thought it was for clarity purposes.
Yeah, that's council.
It already says that in the now therefore be resolved by the town council. This is all a continuation of that.
Well, then maybe we should put that as a number 5. It's sort of like dangling
That's a
there.
good point. Yeah. You can either add council or make it a number 5.
John, are you okay with that?
Add what is number 5 now?
At the last, the word says, and may also consider, instead of using the word council, just make it number 5.
I didn't mean to make that a specific finding the council would make. That's why I didn't number it. I wanted to leave it really open-ended, that whatever comes up.
Which he wants to separate.
And,
He wants council there.
yeah, council may, that,
Yeah.
Council may also be
that need more stylistically correct, actually. Council
there. Town
may
council.
also consider any matter arising from it. Is that-
Okay, does that, we agree on that?
Mr. Mayor, will you entertain comments from the public comments?
Sure.
There were 2 that struck me, and I appreciate it.
Mike, a little louder, please.
There were 2 items that I wanted to just briefly comment on. The first is in point 1, where the finding is that it's made for a public purpose or so as to confer a benefit upon the public. It strikes me that quite often the benefit conferred upon the public may be in fact the full and fair consideration that the town will receive if the street is abandoned. That's monetary compensation, which is referenced in point 2. I can just foresee that there are many, if not most, of the instances that might come before the council. There's not going to be an obvious or apparent public purpose in the request by the applicants, related to the abandonment. I think it's very often going to be something that is driven by the applicant's desire to see this happen. And so my point would be, again, the benefit conferred upon the public may in fact be the monetary compensation, the increase to the public purse that's going to come about if that street is abandoned and it's sold for fair compensation. That was point number 1. The other point is that there's no mention in the resolution of the council considering the benefits to the applicants themselves, which I think, I'm not suggesting outweighs the consideration of the public benefit, but it's something that ought to be referenced in the resolution and ought to be considered. And maybe the appropriate place would be at the end of that sentence that the council was just talking about, when we're talking about any other matters arising from or related to the subject, maybe a specific reference in there, including the benefits that would be conferred upon the applicant requesting the Stubb Street abandonment. So those are the 2 points I'd ask the council members to consider before finalizing the resolution.
John, do you have any?
There was a lot of discussion about the public purpose, which was apart from the monetary compensation. And that can take a lot of different forms. One would be there's actually a liability to the town, and that the town is relieved of that liability or whatever, or responsibility. But there was a lot of discussion. I tried to just really spread distill that. I wrote it down, all the discussion that went on, just tried to distill it down to these points. There was a fair amount of discussion by council on a separate issue of benefit apart from the purchase price. As to the benefit to an individual, government doesn't really function to necessarily benefit specific individuals. Government is here to benefit all the citizens, of which the parties making an application obviously are a part of, but it's not, that is not a paramount consideration in the functioning of the government, shouldn't be in the functioning of the government. So that's the only comments I have.
Any,
I would add, I think point number one is an important point to have to cover any of the unique aspects of any particular application that could come for a sub-street vacation. And it allows town council members to have some flexibility of when an application comes up, to look at it for both the benefit of the town and also that it is made for a public purpose. So I appreciate the flexibility of having that number one in there.
well, were you proposing number one be removed or sort of fiddled
I
with?
think the word used a minute ago was
Pardon?
tweaked.
Tweaked.
It may be, again, I'm just throwing out there the idea that it might be appropriate to reference at the end of number one that in some fashion that, you know, it's, that the monetary compensation could be the item that is, the benefit that is conferred on the public in certain circumstances.
Doesn't it say that in number two?
Yeah, I must say I don't, it just seems to me this is a pretty general statement which says somehow the public's going to benefit. And you go through this and the town either / public either get money or they get some other non-dollar benefit, or they are relieved of responsibility for taking care of something that in theory they should have been taking care of. I don't know that this sort of, I don't know if this is written in some way that exclude anybody from coming to the door. I'm on water.
It's not just monetary compensation, it's not for sale. It can be sold if it serves some public purpose to sell it. And that could be a lot of different things.
Well, is there consensus that we keep it as it is, or?
Yeah.
Other people?
I just wanted to ask,
Opinions, please.
Mike, are you saying that number two actually encompasses number one?
I do think they're distinct. The point that the only point I was trying to make, and I don't want to belabor this process, I appreciate getting a comment at all, is that when we think about what benefit might be conferred upon the public when we're making that there, and I respectfully disagree somewhat with John's idea that, you know, I think the public benefit can be, in fact, the monetary compensation that the town receives. That's not exclusive, it could be any number of other reasons as well, as have already been alluded to. So I wanted to bring that out in case council members wanted to consider that and tweak that language in some way. I'm not suggesting it should be eliminated, it absolutely should be a prime consideration.
And then are we going to make the next sentence after number 4, we're going to make that number 5?
No, it's just going
No.
to say council may also consider.
Okay.
And I didn't want that to be a number. So are we going to vote this? Are we going to vote?
Yeah.
Yep.
Everyone ready for a vote or any more discussion?
We need to make a motion to.
Yeah. We'll make a motion to approve this as is.
Yes, sir.
With the.
With
addition
the
of-
one caveat of that, the paragraph after number 4 should say, and town council may also consider.
And also number 1, we said it is made for public purpose. It.
Wait a second, I don't know if I can do that.
Oh, I'm just trying. All right, I second the motion.
Michelle, roll call vote on that, so. Brad?
Aye.
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 All right, approved. All right. What is the, how do people? Yeah, let's get back to the budget. Now, wait a second. For people's benefit here. Is council interested in actually discussing the Eaton and Ethical proposal now that we have the standard, or is that something that people would prefer the next one?
Complete application.
I think it was discussed at, 2 meetings back then. And I think if we're going to get into it, we've got to get into the specifics again. Because there was the same discussions that just to refresh everybody's memory. I think it would be more efficient, I don't mean to make unnecessary trips, but more efficient as a body if it were at the next meeting, everybody identified, goes back and refreshes their memory and identifies the issues from the application.
And we now have the resolution in hand to use as a checklist.
I would propose, and indeed urge, that discussion put off to next month, but in advance of that discussion, the complete application has been distributed or redistributed. If there are any tweaks or anything needs to be done, and that the council have the objective of saying yay or nay at the next meeting to get this off the table and let poor Mr. Eaton know what the hell's going on with this one.
Mr. Mayor, I would be glad to hear individually from any council members who have any questions about the materials in the applications. That's perfectly appropriate. And with, any emails or phone calls that feel like anything that could be fleshed out in more detail. And of course, John and I will be communicating about that too. That was, we welcome that opportunity if anybody had any further questions.
Is that an acceptable goal, everybody? They're like, let's get this off the table.
Yes.
Very much so.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, and this is nothing new, but the one big issue that, in my mind, after hearing comments of council, are concerned about the condition of the building, and something actually be done, whereas what was offered by Ms. Eagle was just a statement of intention and not in any way binding.
Well, if I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
If any council members have been in that corner of the town recently, they'll notice that there's been a substantial improvement in the condition of that building and the impetus behind that, to be perfectly frank. was the discussion 2 or 3 council sessions ago, and Ms. Eagle making the representation that, first off, she was going to clean up, make efforts to clean up that property, and I think she's done that.
Yes.
As Mr. Eaton, who looks at it at his front door, can certainly echo that.
But you also used the word improvements. Were there improvements made to that, or was it just cleaned out?
It's been cleaned up, but the doors have been replaced and enclosed and put back on. I mean, I would not want to overstate the use of the word improvements, but I think we can all agree it's a lowercase improvement from what it was. My concern is if I don't, the idea of there being some great linkage between Mrs. Eagle coming forward and proposing some kind of concrete formalized plan that would have to go through planning commission, ARB review, reviewed by the zoning administrator, and all of those things before the council can somehow act or feel like it can act on the proposal, on the abandonment, the Stump Street abandonment. I have a real concern about that, because in a real sense, Mrs. Eagle doesn't know what she could propose to do with that lot until she knows what the final property, the lot configuration would be. And there's a whole host of questions that have arisen before that have been addressed in some fashion to the zoning administrator in the past, and there have been, according to Ms. Eagle, there have been different answers that she's been given to different questions, these different questions over the years. So I'm concerned about going down a path where, this property owner has to come forward and have some concrete proposal about what she's going to do with that building.
Well, I guess as a council member, the one concern that I would have is, I assume it's village residential, the zoning? I'm assuming that it's village residential.
It is.
I had a sense that Mrs. Eagle wanted to put a cottage in there. I'm not asking to see the plans of the cottage. I'm not asking to have any kind of assurance that it's going to have 2 floors or what have you. I just don't want it to be something else than a cottage or a residential building.
A presentation about that.
Right, and I think that's where the town council has been led to believe.
I think that's
there's going to be a residential.
Yeah.
And so that is the kind of commitment I know for myself as a town council member I'd be concerned about. I'm not going to.
And I'm not trying to walk sideways on it. I mean, that is her firm intention. That hasn't changed. But you addressed my concern, Mr. Campbell, which was, having her come forward with a whole set of plans and I mean, she's already got that front elevation that she handed around the other council meeting.
But I'm sorry.
I don't misunderstand. I mean, her intention is absolutely consistent, but still consistent with the idea of.
So that's the kind of commitment we're looking for. Or at least that I'm looking for. I can't speak for the rest of it.
Mr. Mayor, I recall also there was discussion about assurances that it wouldn't be a nuisance before any improvements are undertaken, that be secured in such fashion that it wouldn't attract vermin, that type of thing, which doesn't require the ARB approval or zoning administrator approval or anything like that, just a statement as to what she commits to.
Those are the efforts that she's already engaged in the last.
Yeah, well, that's great that she's done it, but she'll put it in writing that it'll stay like that.
I don't think there's any issue.
All right. So it will be on the agenda, it will be discussed. And may I suggest, Mr. Bennett and Mr. Brown, that the two of you get together in your convenience before that meeting, just to make sure that everybody's clear on whatever, so that then there's a vote, assuming there's a vote at the next meeting, we're not looking for more information or this and that.
Absolutely.
All right, task force committee updates, everybody's received copies of them. I don't know what you all want to do. I'm not sure that, given other things we have to do tonight, that it's worth getting into discussions about any of these, unless there's something that someone says, I really want to talk about right now.
Just want to add, the infrastructure task force has not issued their report. Part of the reason was we were waiting for a couple of things to occur, such as the inspection of the waterworks. So we've had the state come through, some notes on that. So now that that's been done, I'll get back to the rest of the task force and we'll get that prepared so that we'll the December meeting.
A lot of good work in these things. Okay, new business.
You wouldn't want to get anything with the, I thought,
Oh, that's right, yes, I'm sorry, apologize, yeah, back to the PUD.
So, the way I sort of pigeonhole this concept of the PUD into the existing town zoning ordinance was to offer an amendment to the uses in zoning districts in Article 1 that a PUD would be permitted in any zoning district as long as it had sewer. And was in the sewer service district. The way I've heard this discussed is that the PUD contemplates a greater density, if appropriate, and given the soils that are in the town, the only way that can really happen is if it's on sewer, I think it's practical. So, also, I don't think the PUD is intended to create pockets of sprawl. It's there to promote the orderly expansion and infill of the town. And that's typically accomplished by having things on the sewer system and then expanding the sewer system once the original area is developed out. So that was the thinking there why I added the part about the sewer. Then it would be by special use permit in any zoning district. We're going to add it to the special uses in Article 6 under, it's at the very end, plan unit development, and this gets more into the specifics, but it's at the bottom of page 1 that plan unit development may be permitted, sewer issue, and in furtherance of increasing the residential population and available opportunities or amenities of the town. It's subject to the following minimum standards. In the sewer service district, minimum size is 2 acres. The provisions of Article 5, which are the technical subdivision requirements that were discussed in various sections of the Planning Commission draft, such as setbacks and lot configuration, lot size, densities, all of that all of those could be waived. Now, I threw this in for reasons that I don't completely appreciate, but I think it's important just to consider as a talking point. Can height regulations be waived? Is that something that everybody's got to work around, or could there be an exception to that? So that's a talking point there, that said that any of the provisions, subdivision provisions could be waived, except as to height. And that's the talking point. And it gives council the authority to waive other provisions of the zoning ordinance, not only in the subdivision ordinance. And now this is an important point because the draft from the Planning Commission says different things at different times, and I've drafted it in one fashion as a talking point, but I may have misunderstood the draft, what its final intention was. And that is that a PUD can have uses such as light commercial, office, and similar uses as an adjunct to the residential uses, even though the light commercial and the office wouldn't necessarily be permitted in that zoning district. So the draft talks about it on both sides of the issue, and that's the way it's drafted as a talking point, but it can be changed that all the uses have to conform to the uses in the zoning district. But it seems to me that the intent of this planned unit development ordinance is to allow council and the planning commission in town flexibility to consider new, different, novel, creative land uses, and taking a whole set of uses off the table right at the beginning of the process without considering on a case-by-case basis sort of goes counter to the intentions as I get it from behind the planned unit development. So I came down on that way, but it's a talking point. Now, in the draft, there's a lot about the application process and what has to be submitted. And the town already has those standards when somebody applies for a non-residential use. So I just said that Article 2, which contains all that process and what you have to submit, 12 copies of this, and it's got to be a certain scale, on and on and on and on, that apply to planned unit developments also. And that it provides in Article 2 that it's reviewed and approved by the zoning administrator, but since there's so many variables in this, obviously that first the zoning administrator would essentially review it as to completeness under the ordinance. And once that happens, then it goes to the planning commission for review, and within 90 days the planning commission would make a recommendation to the council, and the council has 120 days thereafter, or it's where the planning commission and the town council could hold a joint public hearing, as it's traditionally done on a lot of these matters, to consider what has been submitted. And then, number 5, it just makes explicit that you're going to consider things that aren't allowed under the present ordinance, and that's attached and clustered structures and combinations thereof, which are only permitted in certain zoning districts, whereas now it would be permitted essentially wherever there was sewer. Not by right, but as something to be considered. The development plan would be a legal document, but it would be proffered by the applicant, and it would be legally binding on the development of the property. It would be running with the property, not any promise by an individual who may go bankrupt or whatever thereafter. That's the normal way that is handled. Going from the draft of the Planning Commission, that any structures be in accord with the design standards of the most recent guidelines for new construction from the ARB, that consistent with the resolution that the council has adopted in land use matters, that the zoning administrator certifies that the application is complete before you get into advertising and submitting it to the planning commission and council and having the public show up, and then the application isn't complete and they have to come back, that type of thing. So that's consistent with resolution already adopted by council. Now, this is, number 9 is a nuance, but it's an important one to consider. And I've put some things down here to just draw some attention to it right at the very beginning. That if, number 1, any cut has to be integrated into the larger fabric of the town. It can't be some walled-off villa type development, but that it has to be integrated into the fabric of the town. But at the same time, when you start to cluster something and you have these higher densities, that isn't necessarily capable of being developed on a grid structure, street grid. So to get density and to get clustering, it would necessarily involve, in most instances, a deviation from the grid structure. So I wanted to put that in there right up front to call everybody's attention to it so the discussion can begin before any ordinance is adopted, so an applicant will have a clear idea of where that may go, because that's a fundamental point. It affects the whole nature of the application, and everything the applicant would do would be what type of streets and layout would be required. Also, when you cluster something, typically the frontage on a private street, usually, is very narrow, and it goes back and fans out if it's single family. So you have frontage, lot frontages that are less than what's required in the subdivision ordinance. So I wanted to mention that explicitly right up front. So the other thing to keep in mind is that an overriding principle that consideration of the title ordinance has to conform to the general standards of any special use permit, and I'll just mention those again so everybody's got them in their mind, will not be injurious or conflict with the predominant character of the neighborhood, considering the size, location, use, nature, intensity of operation, will not adversely affect the health and safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed use, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood or to the quiet enjoyment of the property or improvements in the neighborhood, will be in accord with the provisions of the ordinance and the plan of use and development embodied therein, as well as in accord with the comprehensive plans or parts thereof from time to time adopted by the governing body. So there's the reference to the comp plan, which was mentioned several times in the draft. So that those 4 general conditions cover a lot of territory and sort of restate succinctly many of the things that were said with more particularity in the draft. As a matter of personal habit, I guess at this point, I tend to view drafting a document like this to make it more general. As it's more general, it can encompass a lot of different things. To the extent you try and get specific, then if you've missed something, there's an argument about whether it was intended or not to be included or not included. So in my view, there's a level of generality that is best suited to drafting an ordinance such as this. And I tried to stay there in the general and not get too specific on everything. So that's the draft for everybody's consideration. And any comments or input that anybody has, please send them to me and I'll work them up so we can all be submitted to council, planning commission, or ARB at the appropriate time.
There's one thing I did see that Article 2, the zoning ordinance talks about special requirements for non-residential uses.
That's right. So
So this is relating to number 4.
number 4, notwithstanding that it says the development plan relates to notwithstanding the fact that such PUD may contain only residential uses, which shall nevertheless conform to the provisions of Article 2, as if a non-residential use by submitting the required information and development plan and other provisions set forth in Article 2.
And in number 3, you talk about halfway down, limited mixed uses. I think to put it in alignment with what is in the addendum from the Housing Task Force, that instead of limited mixed uses, you may want to use appropriate mixed uses. So that was the language that was in the document there. But I don't know if that legal definition is different than the normal definition.
I think that's an appropriate word.
So that is a chance of,
But I'd like to, I appreciate there's a lot of work that's gone into this. I'd like to be able to compare this to the other document, just to ensure that Mr. Bennett's all right with it, just have another pair of eyes.
Well, no, I'm not all right with this. This is a draft, and I welcome everybody's comments. I hope I covered it all, but I may not. So
I appreciate
welcome
the effort.
everybody's comments.
Appreciate the effort.
John, when you say in a planned unit development may be permitted in any zoning district, I'm not sure I quite follow that.
Well, for instance, Avon Hall, in the town lot, is rural residential,
Right,
but it's got sewer.
right.
So then there's vast portions of the town that are rural residential that have no sewer. So really, the defining thing is not the zoning district, it's the availability of sewer.
It is available though, right?
No, it's in rural residential, so it's not.
It does not have sewer.
Yeah.
But
It's right there.
but I mean, it's available,
Yeah, it's available.
I'm just saying it's not hooked up under
Yeah,
the.
but under the ordinance, it's not provided to rural residential.
So when you're saying.
Change?
Yeah, let me clarify that. Sewer is physically there, and that would be an appropriate area to consider as an example, more
Well,
intensive uses.
Another thought that crosses my mind when I read that, that isn't covered by rural residential would be any zoning district, so you mean it could be zoned for business, it could be zoned anyway that the town has things zoned, right?
Yeah, it could be anywhere, it's really considered,
Yeah,
PUD is
I
considered how
realize
it integrates with what's around it, and whether it's appropriate for the densities and the plan is appropriate, given what's around it and the fabric of the town. It's meant to give a lot of flexibility. That's the whole name of the game.
Well, I think it does, so.
And as I've mentioned to council a number of times, I really believe this is, and I've said this for a long time, that this is really the smart way, not the smart way, but a smart way to approach zoning, because you can't sit here and figure out all the wonderful things that could happen to a piece of property and embody it in an ordinance that you're going to follow to the letter. That proposals come in, and you really have to tweak, tailor, modify, waive provisions to allow a proposal that has merit, that advances the interests of the town and citizens to go forward and to become a reality. And if by applying the letter of an ordinance, that's just, it precludes that approach. So, as I've said, I have said it in different words. I've never said PUD 2 years ago, but that's essentially what this ordinance does.
You would have said HOA.
No, I didn't say each other. I'm not. Didn't you do?
So,
Any other questions, Brad, Patrick? Mary Ann?
No, I think it's a
Observations?
great starting point.
Okay, so we have it, Fred, you're going to take a look at it, it is, but I'm sure that, your folks are, and hopefully we can have a vote on next meeting.
Well, there would be votes that go to public.
Advertised here.
Yeah, I had to finalize that.
I did mean that. All right, thank you, a lot of work. All right, we're going to go into closed session in a minute, but let me just,
We have a few things,
huh?
a couple more things.
We do? Oh, that's right.
There's more to the agenda before you go into the party and then the public forum.
Don't you have to do the new business before you go?
That will be considered after they come out of it.
Oh, the Christmas parties that we're talking about?
Yeah, I need, well, after.
What did we spend on Christmas party
That
last
was
year?
even, it's approved last year. But we don't even have to put it on anymore, it's just we always,
Okay.
so. We let me move that I can spend
I propose you spend as much as you did last year. I don't know what the number is.
I don't know, but it was probably slightly less than that, but
Okay.
nothing's ever cheaper, so.
It's under $2,500, is it not?
Yeah.
All right. You and I will work that out. That's acceptable with everybody.
So everybody knows that the Christmas,
Okay.
the second week.
Be my last gasp. I get to decide how many, whatever for the Christmas party. Don't parent, you know.
The day before,
the date
it's the ninth. The ninth.
the 9th.
December 9th.
The day before the next Christmas, I mean, the next council meeting. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I should have it today.
Yeah.
Okay, that,
Public
got it, okay.
This thing? Let me see it here, I saw.
From the bottom.
Is that just-
Yeah. Well,
Yes, if there was anything. I
Is
don't
the
know.
9th a Sunday night?
Yeah.
You have under new business B, it says that the advertisement of a joint public hearing planning commission on December 8th, that should be on December 10th. Correct, under new business B?
Yes, it should be,
you're right.
you're right.
That may be one.
Well, when you authorize, when you get to the point where you authorize.
Yeah.
All right, so we're good with the public forums that we're doing, then we, well, I hereby open the public forum. Any subject, anything, Mr. Rachel?
2 brief points. One, you're all to be commended on a great election. Great election. If for no other reason than I'm led to believe that the highest percentage of voters of the town of Washington appeared to the polls to elect their Democratic government than have ever participated in a town council election. It probably is the highest participation of voters in the Commonwealth. Now, admittedly, you all start with an advantage. There are not millions of voters in the town of Washington. Having said that, however, by any measure, the number of votes cast that elected the incoming town council is a remarkable number and a huge increase, more than twice, that participated in the most recent elections. So it should not go unnoted that by aligning the election of the town officers with a general election, what we hoped would be accomplished was accomplished. Not only should all the elected officials pat themselves for a very, I would say, engaged, certainly in my 6 years it was the most engaged election, but also the citizens of the town of Washington who actually bothered to vote. So I think that it may not be a big deal, but it's worth noting that in a town that is challenged for its very existence, for why it should exist if its residents don't give a damn, apparently they do. And they manifested that when they came out and actually cast votes for contested seats, which is also not common in the town. So I just think that that's worth noting. Second, as to the PUD ordinance that was presented, having spent a little time on that subject, I'm very, very pleased. It accomplished, I would say, 3 significant goals. One, it meets the purpose for why the town council should consider and adopt a PUD. The flexibility, the development, the future of the town. 2, it is consistent with the character of the town in that it doesn't read like a 10-page document for a very large municipality. It reads like the appropriate kind of document for a town of the scale of Washington. And 3, it really did respond to what I saw as the principal challenges going forward. One, we knew that there was a wastewater treatment plant issue. It's in this draft. 2, we knew that there were issues about how any new PUD ordinance would integrate with the existing ordinances of the town. It does that very well. And 3, I think it is both detailed enough and flexible to meet the current pressing needs of the town, and can probably be adopted and implemented quickly enough to actually result in positive growth for the town, which is the ultimate comprehensive plan goal. So having listened, I didn't read it carefully, I haven't studied it, and I don't intend to as a non-resident of the town. However, having listened to a fairly careful presentation, it ticked off all the boxes I was listening for. So I would encourage the council to move forward promptly, make such revisions or edits as may be prudent and necessary. I liked appropriate better than limited. But it looks like you're on target now to get this done, maybe even more quickly than abandoning a stump street. That's an editorial.
Any other, Joe?
I think we should consider combining the swearing-in ceremony with the town.
I'm sorry, Laura?
I think we should consider combining the swearing-in with the town town Christmas party. The day before the meeting.
No, you missed this part because you came in late.
Oh.
Well, maybe you didn't,
No,
but
I didn't.
his term ends on the 31st.
Right, and we're going to swear in the new members on the 10th.
Yeah, but
Right.
it's only if you're being sworn in effective for January 1st.
Right, I know, but just as the whole town's here, just do the swearing in on the 9th. Yeah, I don't care. I'm just,
Hello, the national.
doesn't matter. Well, it does, but.
Well, it kind of re-involves.
Yeah, it just meant the whole town's going to be here, so it's sort of a.
It's a nice thought.
Yeah. Have Santa Claus wear something.
Wants to come to our Christmas party? I always ask her, but
That's a good idea.
I can ask her. I can ask her if she would be available to come for everybody and ask her.
Yeah, good idea. Nancy?
I've been made aware of a book that exists about cluster developments that I think should definitely be a part of the PUD discussion. They're beautiful examples. In fact, in the workshop that was done a few years ago about the possibility, one example from this book was run off and given out. And I think I think looking at that book will will encourage support of it.
Would you give the name of that to?
I think it's called Pocket Neighborhoods.
By Ross
Is
Chapin.
that a book that's already been looked at?
Yeah.
We have a member of the county who has been proliferated that book throughout the county. So, Case has sent that.
There's at least a dozen copies.
I never realized that's
Three dozen.
3 dozen.
What's the name of it?
A Pocket Neighborhoods by Ross Chapin. I have an extra copy of it as well. It is a wonderful book, not only for describing, as Ms. Bunting says, describing the idea for the philosophy, but also giving some wonderful pictures and descriptions.
Does he have extra copies? Well, let's figure out how to get the book. Either it's just buy it, it's for every member of the county.
I have some available here for people to come and check it out.
Yeah. Check maybe Case's got extra copies. Thank you. Anything else? All right, I'm going to close the public forum. Actually, before you leave, though, let me just say something about what we're doing next. It is in front of you. But to remind, we have an existing offer for the purchase of the property on Leggett Lane. As we said at the last meeting, it's a serious offer, which we're taking very seriously. It's an attractive offer. It is from a person/business whose business is, if you're part of that, the construction of buildings to be leased to the post office. The gentleman who knows what he is doing. I can't remember if I said this last meeting or not. Brad and I and John met with him and a couple other people a couple weeks ago. He has a lot of experience in putting up, and now I forget the number, but 35 post offices in the Northern Virginia area. He has a good reputation. He knows how the government works. He believes we have a very good site. Something that is of importance is the speed at which we can deal with this opportunity. There are zoning issues, there are potential ARP issues, there's an old building on that property. And we're going to move as expeditiously as possible to try to take advantage of what's a very good, we think, opportunity. One would think from the standpoint of the post office that once a new facility, they would get one designed to their standards, has close access to 211, that's accessible truck access, and it is in the town of Washington. It's not 2 miles south of here. One might think, at the risk of using a cliche, that it might be a win-win proposition for well, so that's kind of a reminder of the background of what's going on right now. You want that?
Only that, it's been an issue. It was announced the post office going to leave the town of Washington. There's been discussion townwide, countywide, for and against, and if I recall, I think the paper wrote that the post office in the town of Washington is the oldest continuously operating post office in its same town since its inception. So that's something of very important significance. The town of Washington doesn't lose its post office. And so, I made some initial inquiries to try and get this started. I think we're really at a good point to make this happen so we can retain the post office here in town, which I think will satisfy a great deal of people. So it's important to the town.
It is indeed. And the alternative down by the bank road has not been, to my knowledge, has not appeared to have really been vetted so far. So there might be some issues there. But with that as a prelude to going into closed session,
Mr. Mayor, as far as the motion,
guide us, John.
there's a draft here that sets forth the form of motion, but I would ask council's consideration to also add to that consultation with legal counsel about a matter requiring the provision of legal advice under 2.23711.7, subsection 7, namely matters related to the existing structure on the town lot. So, the form of the motion would be that, and also to enter in closed session, what's written here, in accordance with provisions of 2.23711.3, to discuss the disposition of publicly held property, namely parcel 3 at the intersection of Old Route 211-522 and Lake Lane, containing 0.5853 acres, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position and negotiating strategy of the town council. So those would be the two items. That would be the form of motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Brad, you second. All in favor? Aye.
We need to have a roll call.
Okay. Aye.
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 Thank you all for joining us.
Here for a while.
We should be certified that only matters. We should be certified that only matters lawfully exempt from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act.
Only those matters which were identified in the two motions by which the foregoing closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed session. How say would you?
Yes.
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 Open session.
Open session. All right, the first item is, will the town agree to the sale of parcel 3 at the intersection of Old Route 211 and 522 Lake Lane? That is on the table. If there's any discussion as to whether we want to proceed with that, let's have it. If not, we'll have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that town council consider and agree to the sale of parcel 3 at the intersection of Old Route 211, 522 and Liggett Lane, containing 0.5853 acres on the terms set for in the certain contract reviewed by the council.
Second.
And the mayor would be authorized to execute the contract immediately, subject to the required notices, public hearing, and approval by the council December meeting or thereafter.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that a roll call?
I mean,
Yes.
yes, roll call. Yes.
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 And the second item, Mr. Mayor, would be, would the council consider authorizing advertising the zoning text amendment whereby section 1-4-1 would be amended to add a new subsection L, assuming that a new subsection K is going to be added pursuant to PUD ordinance, but K or L, however it turns out, to permit post offices postal services, and related uses by special permit in any zoning district. To be a public hearing to be held and the ordinance to be considered on December the 10th. A joint public hearing with the planning commission.
I'd like to,
To discuss that.
Any discussion?
do you want to have a motion?
If not, do we have a motion?
I will move that town council authorize the advertisement of a joint public hearing of the planning commission on December 10, 2018 to adopt, after a recommendation from the planning commission, the zoning ordinance amendment permitting the use of parcel 3 at the intersection of Old Route 211 and Leggett Lane containing .5853 acres as a post office and similar facilities, or alternatively a zoning ordinance amendment to section 1-4-1 of the town zoning ordinance to permit post offices and similar facilities by special use permit in all zoning districts.
That would be the form of motion.
Second, I'll second.
Jerry, second?
Roll call?
Yes.
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 And then the third matter to be considered is there is a structure located on the lot on which the council is moving forward to a public hearing. The public hearing is required in consideration of the December meeting. And to the best information available now, a post office could not be located on that lot if the existing structure is there. There would not be sufficient ground area to permit the construction of the post office and the necessary parking and related facilities. So the purchaser would require that the structure not be on the property before he could go forward with building a post office. In consideration of that, the town could offer to consider contract offers by any party to remove the structure by no later than February 14th, 2018, subject to the acceptance of such contract offer acceptable to the council. That would be the form of the motion.
Okay, wait a minute, we have discussion. Didn't you say you wanted to do something before that?
No, the advertising is for it'll be advertised for 90 days, which will bring it out.
That is-
But I
that
thought
would
we
be-
also wanted to get a newer evaluation of the property itself as to if it's safe or worth keeping.
No, we don't need,
No.
we're looking into that.
Yeah, as a matter of, for the record here, the council some time ago had this structure evaluated, and the opinion of the person who evaluated the structure, it couldn't reasonably be moved, and it was of such nature that it wasn't practically a candidate for restoration. But if somebody, the idea being if there's any party that wants to step forward and do something with it, now's the time.
I make a motion of the proposed motion that Mr. Bennett put forward.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Let's go this way.
Yes.
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 If there are no other issues to discuss, I suggest we have a motion to close the meeting.
I'll move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Wow.